6 years ago this fall, the president rolled out his Iraq war sales job, waiting until fall, as his chief of staff at the time said, because you don't introduce new products in August. 4 years later, Democrats won control of Congress, raising hopes that Congress would hold Mr. Bush accountable for his war lies with the tool given by the Constitution to defend the Constitution, namely impeachment. In our fourth story tonight, the House of Representatives has now sent an article of impeachment to the Judiciary Committee for debate as soon as next week. But there's a catch. The House voted 238 to 180 yesterday to send impeachment to a hearing in the Judiciary Committee. But that catch, Speaker Pelosi has said the House will not vote on impeachment, kind of rendering the verdict before the evidence. Even though Congressman Dennis Kucinich promises new information from a legislative leader of an unnamed U.S. ally. Instead, Judiciary Chair John Conyers says the hearing will focus on general abuses of power. Perhaps like this one. The president today used a claim of executive privilege to block the release of FBI notes on the Valerie Plame leak investigation, including notes of their interview with Vice President Cheney, whose chief of staff, Scooter Libby, was convicted of obstructing the FBI leak investigation and who told the FBI Cheney might have ordered the leak, the purpose of which was, of course, to discredit Iraq war critic Joe Wilson, his Plame's husband. Let's turn once again to Jonathan Turley, professor of constitutional law at George Washington University. John, thanks for your time tonight.
Hi, Keith.
First, the executive privilege claim in this. Is there any validity to this executive privilege claim number 1,000, whatever it is?
Yeah, it's hard to keep the accurate count. You know, reading this letter from Attorney General Mukasey to the president's extraordinary. He doesn't just claim presidential privilege. He claims deliberative process privilege. He claims law enforcement privilege. He claims anything short of a copyright infringement to keep the documents away from Congress. His position apparently is, I recognize, and he says this, that Congress has an oversight right to look into this area. You just can't see any of the evidence you need to do it. And unfortunately, this is more of the same. We've seen this in other areas where Mukasey is treating the White House as off the constitutional grid, that anything that happens in that building, in his view, simply is not accessible to Congress.
And citing Mukasey for contempt of Congress in some way, for not participating in the release of those FBI notes of the Cheney interviews and whatever else they might need. Is there anything? Is that a non-starter? Is that process gone too? I'm afraid it is. And, you know, this is why when Senators Schumer and Feinstein saved Mukasey's confirmation, this is what they purchased. And what Congress needs to do, the only thing they can do, is to bring back inherent contempt and to say they're going to start to exercise contempt on their own, that the deal is off. The Attorney General Mukasey has broken a very long-standing promise to be a faithful broker to bring these cases to the grand jury. He won't. And Congress has a right now to say we're going back to doing this stuff ourselves. But inherent contempt requires, if need be, sending the sergeant of arms over with a baton and hitting somebody over the head if necessary if they're not cooperating. And Congress, I mean, if Congress is going to have impeachment hearings that already have a predetermined outcome, it's very unlikely that they're going to arrest somebody for contempt of Congress. This is futile now.
No, it is true that what Speaker Pelosi is describing is something like what the British call a fancy dress ball, that you're allowed to dress up and pretend, but only for a night. And that's what this hearing's beginning to look like. It appears, from what she's saying, is no matter how compelling the evidence may be of an impeachable offense, it won't go to a vote. And in fact, they're not going to supposedly look at impeachable offenses, which are crimes, and instead look at abuses, which are more of a political question.
So obviously we know, and I think the Republicans know, and I think the only difference is the perception of whether this is a great thing for this country or a terrible thing. We know that this administration, its principal action, its principal place in history will have been to have rolled back democracy. What is the process of rolling back the rollback? What happens to all of this stuff when, you know, the administration changes to whatever is next at midday on January 20th of next year?
Well, I mean, it's a bad legacy on both sides, because where the president rolled back on democracy, Congress rolled over and watched it happen. And whether we can correct that course and actually make this cat walk backwards is a good question. We've seen some disappointing acts by Obama, like his vote in the FISA bill, but he still is obviously committed to many principles that, frankly, I like and many other people like. But it's going to take a lot of intestinal fortitude to go back and say, we're going to really look at these crimes. And I don't see that intestinal fortitude in any of the leadership right now.
Last point, do these impeachment non-hearings or non-impeachment hearings, however you want to phrase it, do they hurt in any way? Do they make the whole thing just look stupid, or are they a net nothing on this?
Well, it's already being structured in a weird way. You know, I testified at the impeachment hearing in the Clinton administration, and when that happened, you had a really broad array of witnesses, and it covered crimes. What they're already saying is that they're going to be talking about a wide array of abuses by the president. An impeachment hearing needs to be focused, and it needs to deal with things directly and frankly as whether the president committed crimes. And there is considerable evidence to say that the answer is yes.
Jonathan Turley, the constitutional law expert from George Washington University. As always, John, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith.